Okay, we're recording. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. This is the Violence Against Women and Girls Cost of Living Fund Q&A webinar. Just to start with some introductions, I'm Sarah Easby. I'm Head of Grants and Impact at the London Community Foundation, and I'm joined by two colleagues, Amari, who's also from the London Community Foundation, and Leslie Webber as well from MOPAC. So the format that we've got for you this afternoon is we will be talking you through some slides that kind of cover the programme criteria, the priorities of the fund, and a little bit of the mechanisms of kind of how to apply. We'll then have time at the end for any questions that you might have specifically around the fund. We do have a Q&A function as this is a webinar. So if you check at the bottom of your screen, you should have a Q&A box. So do feel free to answer any questions you have as we go through. Mari's going to be writing responses to some of those questions as we go, and then we'll pick up any others that might need a bit more of a kind of a verbal answer to at the end of the webinar as well, but hopefully we'll cover quite a lot of the information you're after as we go through the slides as well. So I will begin just with a bit of an introduction to LCF. So if you don't know us already, the London Community Foundation, we are a community foundation that specialises in supporting community-based organisations helping disadvantaged London. So we're a donor advised model, which means that we work with a variety of different donors to create funds that organisations can apply for. So we have about over 60 different types of funds, and they're managed on behalf of some public sector partners, corporate partners, as well as individuals as well. So MOPAC, for the purposes of this fund, is the donor, and so we're working closely to kind of manage and administer this fund, as well as we'll manage the grants once they've been awarded as well. So just to give you a bit of an idea as well, so in 2020 to 21, we awarded almost 22.6 million through about 1,300 grants, and 13.4 million of that was through the COVID response, to give you a little bit of background. I will pass over now to Leslie at MOPAC to introduce MOPAC and a little bit more about the fund specifically.
Thanks, Sarah. So like Sarah said, I'm Leslie Webber and I work for MOPAC, and I am in the Violence Against Women and Girls team in MOPAC, and we're responsible in the team for this particular fund. Just to give a bit of an overview of MOPAC, MOPAC is responsible for policing in London and the delivery of the Mayor's Policing Crime Plan, which was refreshed last year. And the Policing Crime Plan sets out the priorities for London to make it a safer city. And the four key priorities that we've committed to are reducing and preventing violence, increasing trust and confidence, better supporting victims of crime, and protecting people from being exploited or harmed. We're also responsible for the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy for London, which was also refreshed last year alongside the Policing Crime Plan, so they're very much interlinked. This is a 3-year strategy for London. It was a refreshed strategy building on the success of the previous strategy, and this time taking a new public health approach, which was one that had been adopted by the Mayor's Violence Reduction Unit, so using those principles in the development and implementation of the VAWG strategy. Again, this strategy is putting prevention at the centre of everything that we're doing in London, and including a greater focus on education, enhancing partnership working, especially with London's excellent violence against women and girls sector. And again, there are 4 key priority areas which align with the Policing Crime Plan. So we've got preventing and reducing VAWG, supporting all victims and survivors, holding perpetrators to account, and building trust and confidence in the police force and the delivery of policing in London. So just a little bit of information about the fund. We've committed £1 million from the Mayor of London with the purpose of providing immediate support for vital VAWG services in London. So those of you who are tackling violence against women and girls in London who are reporting that the cost of living crisis is disproportionately impacting women and girls. So we're receiving reports in from the sector across London that this is a major concern. What we're hearing is, with the stories that are coming into us, is that there is an increased need for financial support, in particular for basic items such as food and travel, as well as the rising household costs that people are seeing. So the bills, accommodation, and very worryingly, of course, of the reports of women who are experiencing VAWG also experience increased financial related barriers because of the cost of living, which is preventing them from being able to leave or seek help from abusive relationships or household. So therefore the risk of harm not reducing and if anything increasing. So the criteria for this fund, the purpose is that it will provide funding to community-based organisations in London who are tackling VAWG. I've said already that the total budget is £1 million, and from that budget, we are going to be making grants available from between £10,000 and to a maximum of £30,000. We will fund, in terms of the criteria, we'll fund organisations who have a maximum total income of around £500,000 per year. And we recommend that you don't apply for any more than 50% of your annual income. There is an expectation that the grant would be spent within 6 months of the grant award date. Applications are welcome from organisations based in any London borough. And the evidence that we would ask from you is that you're responding to the immediate impacts of the cost of living crisis on women and girls who are affected by violence against women and girls. Or if there are any posts that are going to be funded, so staff members, sessional, freelance workers, the expectation is that funding from the grants must be paid at or above the London living wage, which is currently £11.95 per hour. And the funds will not this fund isn't only about giving grants directly to individuals. However, we can fund organisations who are planning to provide cash grants or vouchers to individuals of up to £500 per individual. So we wouldn't give them out to individuals. That would be what you would put into your application that you would be intending to do. We've said it before, and just really need to stress with this particular fund, this is about responding to the immediate impacts of the cost of living crisis on women and girls affected by VAWG. And the core aim is to address the immediate needs from the cost of living fund. So for example, some of the eligible direct support costs include food security, essential items for women and girls and their children, emergency hardship funds, so what I mentioned earlier, up to £500 per individual. Also supporting access to services, so for example, travel costs to be able to attend appointments, or even access to technology such as smartphones or a computer that will enable somebody to access the support that they need. Also access to important advice, so housing advice, welfare, financial, legal, and access to counselling and therapeutic support. There's also the option to look at core costs within your funding application, so as well as direct support for women and girls. Part of the grant can be used to support your organisation's core costs. So for example, salaries, rent and bills, and additional staffing capacity. And that would be up to a maximum of 50% of the total application amount. We have to set parameters around our funding criteria and what our priorities are. So preference in allocations will be given to specialist violence against women and girls services who are supporting women and girls who are likely to be disproportionately impacted by the cost of living. So this means at least 80% of trustees and staff are from the protected characteristic the organisation aims to work with. The priority will be given to specialists led by and for VAWG services, and that they are supporting the following groups as their primary beneficiaries. So Black women and girls, and women and girls from minority ethnic backgrounds, women and girls with disabilities, neurodiverse women and girls, LGBT+, young women and girls, older women, and women with no recourse to public funds, and also male victims. Priority will also be considered for organisations whose work addresses the intersectionality of more than one of those priority groups. if we have a high volume of applications, and that is possible, we will need to look at further prioritising the parameters around the funding. So we would then look at organisations with an annual income of less than £300,000. We'd look at those who are operating in areas where there are higher levels of deprivation. And so that would be based on the instances of multiple deprivation data in London. And we will also review the geographical location of applications as part of shortlisting, so taking into account the importance of a spread across different London boroughs so that there's equity. Over to Sarah.
Thank you, Leslie. So I just wanted to run through a little bit of sort of LCF's core eligibility criteria. So Leslie's talked us through the fund specific criteria. This criteria I'm about to speak through is essentially standard across all of our grant programs. So you may well be familiar with it if you've already applied for an LCF grant. So to start with, we will be looking as to the eligible legal structures that are able to that we're able to fund. One of those criteria is that the organisation must have a signed governing document. So that's something that we'll be asking you to upload as part of your application. The activities will need to be charitable, and you will either need to be a registered charity, a company limited by guarantee without shares, a community interest company limited by guarantee, a trust, or an unincorporated organisation, or a community benefit society. So those are all the types of eligible legal structures that we are able to fund. In terms of governance, you must have at least 3 unrelated members that are legally responsible for the governance of your organisation. So it could be trustees, directors, management committee, whatever's appropriate to your particular structure. And just to note that this does refer to the highest level of governance. So a management committee that sits below a board of trustees, for example, or directors if you're a company limited by guarantee, that wouldn't count towards the 3 unrelated trustees. So it needs to be the 3 unrelated trustees or directors that are responsible for the highest level of running of your organisation. We also ask that you must have submitted the required financial information on time to the Charity Commission or Companies House for the last 2 completed financial years. So that's one of the checks that we'll do as part of eligibility as well. And also must not have more than 2 years of net current liabilities within the 2 most recent completed financial years. So those are all things that we will be checking. The organisation will need a bank account, and that must be in the same name as the organisation that's applying, with a minimum of 2 unrelated signatories that need to be in place by the start of the grant. We'll also be asking you to upload a safeguarding policy, and this policy will need to have been reviewed and updated within the last 2 years. So do just make sure that there's a date on your safeguarding policy that states when it was last reviewed. We do also have some guidance around safeguarding if you're that's on our website that you can have a look at, that kind of goes through some of the best practice areas that we would expect to be included in safeguarding policy. But the minimum requirement is that it's updated and dated within the last 2 years, and there's some additional criteria that we look at. In terms of previous LCF funding, we ask that all conditions from any previous grants from the London Community Foundation must have been met, and that monitoring that's past its date must have been submitted at the point of application. So essentially we can't fund any organisation with overdue monitoring, but we of course can fund you if you have monitoring on existing grants that isn't yet due. So do just check whether you have any monitoring that's overdue, and essentially make sure that you've been in touch with LCF. We may well have approved an extension, and that's fine, but if it's overdue and we don't know about it, then please make sure you check and get in touch with us as soon as possible before submitting your application. In terms of registration, if the income of your organisation is more than £5,000 per year at the point of application, the organisation must have submitted an application to register with either the charity committee or other relevant registers. And if this grant will take your organisation over £5,000 a year, please do also look into the guidance that you'd need to set up and make sure that you're registered, as that income is a kind of regulatory requirement. So that's something else that we'd be checking as part of our core eligibility criteria. In terms of what's not eligible, so ineligible legal structures are companies limited by shares, which includes CICs limited by shares, statutory organisations such as local authorities, NHS bodies and cooperative societies. We're unfortunately not able to fund any of those structures. In terms of the grant purpose, we can't use, the grants can't be used for promoting religious or political views, can't be for profit or personal benefit, and they can't be for spending that's already happened. So they must be from the point of the grants awarded, rather than any retrospective funding. We can't find activities that exclude people on the basis of religion, sexual orientation, gender or ethnicity, unless the issue is group specific. So that may well be the case in some situations for the purposes of this fund. So do just make that clear in your application. So in terms of how to apply, you may well have applied to LCF before, and this could be familiar to you, but for those of you that haven't, each open fund will have a fund page, and that's listed on the LCF website. So if you go to the website, lcf.org.uk, and you go to this section, the apply section, that will give you the list of all of the funds that are open for applications currently. Click on the fund that you're interested in, and that will take you through to a fund page where essentially all of the information that you should need to be able to submit an application is included. So I would draw your attention particularly to the programme guidance document. So essentially that document is your key document to kind of go through before you start your application. Really go through, it will cover all of the eligibility criteria that I've just spoken through, the fund specific criteria and priorities that Leslie's covered. And I think use that as a starting point to really make sure that you fit the eligibility for this fund in particular. And essentially not to waste your time on doing an application then to realise actually that you don't meet some of the criteria. So I think that's a really important starting point and key document as you submit your application. In terms of the application form, there's then a URL link on the fund page. You click on that link and it will take you through to our portal, where you enter your email address, and then you'll be emailed a link to your specific application form. If the email doesn't come through within sort of up to 5 minutes, make sure you check your junk mail. And if it still doesn't come through, please contact LCF, as it sometimes does get filtered into junk mail. Once you've got access to the form, you can start completing it. You'll essentially be able to share that form with other people in your organisation if you need more than one person to feed into it, and you can complete it in stages, so you don't have to do it all in one go. Supporting documents, I just wanted to sort of highlight the 3 documents that we're asking you to upload as part of your application. First is the signed governing document, an up-to-date safeguarding policy. Again, make sure it's reviewed and dated within the last 2 years, and your annual accounts for the last completed financial year. This can be your draft accounts or management accounts if they're not yet signed off for this financial year. Appreciating we're right at the end of the year, so we will accept draft accounts or management accounts if needed. And just to flag that if you don't submit any of those 3 documents, we're not, for this purposes of this fund, going to be able to follow up with you to chase up those documents. I think we're trying to work on as quick a possible timeline so that we can make sure we get the funds out to where they're needed as soon as possible. So do just triple check that you've uploaded those 3 documents. If you have any problems with uploading them or submitting your application, just reach out to LCF as soon as you can and before the deadline. So the best email address is applications@londoncf.org.uk, or give us a call on our phone number that's on our website as well. So those are the 3 really essential documents that we do need, and we're not able to consider your application without those 3 documents included. Just to talk you through the sort of the process that we've got, you'll see that it is a very short sort of application window, and then we aim to move as quickly as possible in terms of getting the grant decisions out. So the first point in the process is for you to read through the fund guidelines that we've just talked about, really make sure you're eligible, and really have a think about how you meet the priorities specifically as a fund. I think because we're anticipating this fund may well be oversubscribed, we know there's a huge amount of need out there. I think it's having a really real think about how you sort of can highlight if you do meet the fund priorities. Then in terms of your application form, as I've just talked through, you'll enter your email address and you'll be sent a link to your application form, which you can start completing in stages. The deadline is 12 p.m. Midday on the 4th of April. Make sure your documents are uploaded. We'd advise you as well with your application form to sort of, do keep some of the if you're entering any of your text in a Word document, just in case you have any sort of browser crashes or online glitches, to make sure you don't lose your work. Once the application window has closed on the 4th of April, LCF will then check through all of the applications. The first thing we look for is the core eligibility criteria for LCF's criteria, and also then the fund's core criteria. Those organisations that meet that eligibility criteria will all be taken forward to shortlisting, and the shortlisting phase goes into the fund criteria and specifically the priorities of the fund in a little bit more detail. So again, if we are oversubscribed, we are going to be starting to look through those priorities to make sure that the priorities of the fund are met. We then begin the assessments. So organisations that are shortlisted will then be assessed, where we go into a little bit more detail in terms of the project that you're proposing and the activities that you're proposing, and some additional due diligence checks. We then have decision-making panels to make decisions on the grants to award, and those are the weeks commencing the 1st and the 8th of May, with the aim of having all grant decisions out by the 15th of May. So that will be decisions on those grants that are awarded, and also those organisations that have not been successful. That will be a letter that's sent out over email from the LCF directly to the email address that you've registered as part of your application. In terms of reporting requirements for this grant, so essentially the grants are flexible in terms of the direct costs that you're putting forward that support women and girls. We really appreciate that things can change really quickly, and we want you to be able to prioritise to the need as and when it's arising. It's an evolving situation, and I think the principles of this fund is to trust you to know best as to what's needed, and as long as it meets the criteria of the fund, making sure that you're directly supporting victim survivors of VAWG and responding to the needs that are arising as a result of the cost of living crisis, then we trust you to make those changes yourself. You don't need to update LCF. We just ask that you update us at the end of the grant period after 6 months. If there are any changes to core costs, we do ask you to get in touch with us, and we will need you just to submit a change of expenditure request form. We'll try to get that approved for you as soon as we can. So if there are any changes towards core costs, run it past us. If it's anything else directly related to your service delivery, please go ahead and make the changes yourselves to make sure you're responding to the need as quickly as you can. The grants are for 6 months, so that short time period really reflects the fact that this is emergency funding, and we're trying to the focus really is on the now. So we're not looking at kind of the future needs, it's the real current emergency needs that are arising amongst the people that you're supporting. And successful applicants then will be required to report back on the impact of the funding at the very end of the grant period, so that we won't be sort of asking for interim reports. We will just be asking you to update us at the end of the 6-month grant period. We're trying to keep reporting requirements as light touch as possible, but also giving us the information that we need to really understand the impact that your work has had on the women and girls that you support, and also so that we can learn as well and make sure that we're taking into account any kind of emerging needs that are coming out, at the end of that period, so that we can take that forward into future funding considerations as well. So that's reporting. Just a few points on sort of, I guess, a bit of guidance on what we would be looking for in terms of a good funding application. We'll be looking that there's a clear fit for purpose to the programme, that you've really thought about how your work's fitting the purpose of the fund, and that your organisation has clear aims and a clear presence within the community that you support, and a good understanding of and connection to the community. We'll be looking at sort of the plans that you proposed and making sure that they're realistic, and that you have the expertise in place to deliver them. So it may well be existing work that you already have going on, and this is just building and increasing the amount that you're able to offer in terms of support to your beneficiaries. If it's a new project, just do make clear kind of the experience that you have in place, to be able to roll that out quickly within the quite short delivery time period. And again, then making sure that the timeline's achievable and realistic. We do ask a question over the need. So there is a question around asking about the need for the beneficiaries that you support, making sure that that's clear in terms of your understanding of your community, and then how you're responding to that need as part of your application as well. Just a sort of a signpost, I guess, on our website as well. We do have a resources section on our fund page. If you click on apply, just below that there's a tab which is resources, which might have some other useful areas for you to consider as you go through your application. And keeping up to date, we have a monthly newsletter that goes out. If you're not already signed up, really encourage you to do that. It will be giving you information over other funds that we're opening across LCF, and other things going on within the sector. So worth doing if you're not already signed up. That is all we have in terms of the slides to talk through to you. I think it's now over to any questions that anybody might have. I can see there's been a couple of questions that have been answered on the chat, so hopefully that's covered. And currently no open questions. We've run a couple of these. This is the second webinar that we've run this week. We are collating a kind of an FAQ document with common questions that have been coming up. So the questions that have been asked in this session and the session earlier in the week on Monday, we'll be putting together a document that will go on the fund page. So again, as you go through your application, that might well be something you want to have a look through in case there's anything else that's relevant to you and your organisation. So any final questions before we finish? Okay. There's one question that's cleared from Sharon. If your organisation has an income of less than £5,000, can you apply? Yes, Sharon, that would be absolutely fine. There's no minimum income limit, so that's absolutely fine. I can see that somebody has a hand raised. I'm not quite sure how to be able. Are you able to type into the Q&A chat, McKenna? Here we go. Okay, I may be able to. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Your questions come through. Marcus, can new organisations apply where they are less than 1 year old? Yes, this is actually a question that we've adding into the FAQ document as it did come up. earlier in the week, yes, you can apply, and appreciate that you may not have the kind of the track record in terms of the accounts to provide. So we do ask that you provide kind of an income and expenditure sheet for this year if you don't have accounts for your first year. And I think just the key thing is to really make sure in your application that you draw out your existing connection to your community and any work that's been going on, because we would still be looking to sort of how you would be building on that and using that expertise as part of this fund in particular. So another question has come up. This grant will help for all boroughs or only a specific area. So the funding is open for any London borough. So as long as you are based in London, that's fine. And you can work across multiple boroughs as well. There should be an option for you to add in multiple boroughs within the application form. So hopefully that answers that question. Great. Okay, I think that's no further questions have come through. So if there are any final questions, please let us know. If not, please feel free to reach out to LCF as you go through your application. The best email address is applications@londoncf.org.uk, and really happy to help. And then do have a look out for the FAQ document that will be uploaded on the fund page that hopefully should cover some of the questions that have come up. We do have a question.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Amari. So a question that's, we are not a VAWG organisation, but we work with VAWG through our food bank support and employment skills. Will we be able to apply? So I think essentially as if you organisations that do VAWG work through your other work would be eligible. However, you may well not be prioritised because we are the priority group is specialist led by and for VAWG organisations. So I hope that answers that question. Leslie, was there anything you would want to add to that question? Oh, you're muted.
No, sorry. Yeah, that question has come up previously as well, Makana. It's I think just going back to Sarah's point that we do need to prioritise organisations who are specifically working with violence against women and girls, and the evidence that we'd be asking for about the impact of the cost of living on those that they're working with. So it's not that you can't apply; it's just to kind of manage expectations about where we will prioritise.
Okay. And one more question from Amy. Based on the question already answered, can an organisation not staffed by the demographic groups outlined apply? Yes, I mean a similar sort of answer to the answer just given really is that you can. However, those demographic groups outlined are the priorities of the fund. So again, if the fund's oversubscribed, those will be the first priorities that we look to fund, but you would be eligible to apply providing you meet the other criteria and the sort of focus of the fund. I hope that answers your question, Amy. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody very much for joining today. I hope that was helpful and gave you a little bit more context to the fund. Do reach out if there are any other final questions that come to you after this session, and we will be adding more information to the fund page, and wish you all the best with your applications. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.